Good evening, universe. Tonight I'm going to be talking about the first two books in the Wayward Children series by Shannon McGuire. First two books are Every Heart a Doorway and Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I say first kind of loosely because those are the order that they were published, but you can read them in kind of any order because they're more like related to each other than happening in a chronological specific order. I'm not going to be going into any particular spoilers or anything like that, so you're safe to watch the video through if you haven't read the books yet, but I will be kind of vaguely alluding to certain things that happen and things that I enjoyed and didn't enjoy. So the series overall is about these kids who essentially go to a portal world, which is like they start on Earth and then they go to another fantasy realm, kind of like Narnia. But this series specifically surrounds the situation of them having come back to Earth, come back home, and now they are having trouble adjusting to their old lives again. The first book kind of kicks us off, and I'll be going into more detail in a minute, but it's centered around a boarding school for these kids that have returned home. Now, I didn't actually read these books in publication order. I read Down Among the Sticks and Bones first, and then I read Every Heart a Doorway because I watch Murphy Napier's channel, and she mentions that Down Among the Sticks and Bones is better and that both of these books kind of spoil each other, so it's better to read Down Among the Sticks and Bones first. I definitely agree with that opinion. They do have spoilery elements in terms of the plot. That doesn't really bother me. So if it doesn't bother you, then I would actually recommend Every Heart a Doorway first because it sets up the series and what we're going to be doing a little bit better. Whereas Down Among the Sticks and Bones, while I think it is slightly better done, I think it's less of a grounding point than Every Heart a Doorway is. I think Every Heart a Doorway kind of sets you up for what the series is going to be a little bit better, like an introduction. But if you totally want to avoid any possible spoilers for the plot of Down Among the Sticks and Bones, then I would recommend reading that one first. Since that's the order that I read them in, that's the order I'm going to review them in as well. Down Among the Sticks and Bones is about a pair of twins, Jacqueline and Jillian, and each of these twins is shoved into kind of rigid gender roles by their parents. So Jillian is kind of outgoing and likes to play sports. Her parents notice this, when she's like a toddler, and they're like, okay, she's gonna be like the boy. They see that Jacqueline is a little bit more quiet, a little bit more observant, and likes to be clean. So they say, okay, Jacqueline is gonna be the girl. And each child is kind of stuck with their respective gender parent. So Jillian is like the star of her father's eye, while Jacqueline is really prized by their mother. And they kind of show each of their children off in their respective spaces. Each is expected to rigidly stay in these roles. So Jillian is not allowed to wear dresses. She has her hair cut short. She's not allowed to grow it long. While Jacqueline can only wear dresses, has to keep her hair long and beautiful, and is expected to be prim and perfect at all times. So these really rigid guidelines have led to some suppressed resentments over time. But the girls are playing together one day and they discover a magical staircase inside like a chest where they keep old clothes. So they follow this staircase down to a place called the Moors, which is like a gothic horror world. It has like this terrifying spooky moon. Everything's very dark. They go to a village, and then the rest of the novella is just following them as they make their way in this new world. So it's important to note that this is a novella, so it is very short. And that was probably my biggest complaint about this. I loved it overall. I thought it was great. The world, the Moors, was very cool. I liked the exploration of the girls and how they developed after being shoved into these extremely rigid roles by their parents, as well as what made the parents do this, that kind of thing that we had in the beginning. I loved all of that. However, I do kind of wish that we had had a little bit more time to explore the world just a little bit more, as well as follow Jillian's perspective a little bit more, because at the beginning of the book you do get some things from her perspective, but for the most part, we're following Jacqueline's perspective. While I loved Jack, I thought she was an excellent character and I thought she was really interesting and fun. I definitely prefer her over Jillian. I would have preferred a little bit more time with Jill to see how she develops the way that she ends up developing throughout the book. We see plenty of what she does, but we mostly see it through Jack's perspective, and I think it would have been really interesting to get more of her growth through her own eyes. Again, this is going to remain spoiler free, so I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end, but I will say there were some aspects of it that I really enjoyed. There was one particular trope that the book kind of used that I did not enjoy very much. I feel like there could have been a way around it that would have... I feel like there were ways around it where the author could have still used it to get to the point that she wanted to get to without using this one particular trope. So I kind of wish that that had happened, but for the most part, I really enjoyed this book, and I was really excited to read Every Heart a Doorway next in order to get more of this series. So, Every Heart a Doorway is, like I said, the introduction to this book series, and it takes place at, I think it's called Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, something like that. The idea is that you go to this boarding school after you've come home from a portal world, and you will be rehabilitated, essentially, into modern day life. Now, the parents don't believe that their kids have gone to a portal world. Usually they'll believe something else, like the kid got kidnapped and was gone for this length of time, or something like that. I don't think time passes in exactly the same way between Earth and the portal worlds. I'm pretty sure it varies with each portal world, but usually there is some amount of time that seems to pass. Our lead in this book, her name is Nancy. She went to a place that she calls the Halls of the Dead, and it seems like she has like a Hades Persephone type underworld situation. They mention pomegranate juice. They mention how she is with souls. Her big thing is that she would often pretend to be a statue in the court of the Lord of the Dead. So she's very good at becoming completely still like a statue even now that she's returned home. So in this book, we don't actually see anything of the Halls of the Dead. We only have Nancy's like reminiscing about it. So the book begins when Nancy gets sent to the Home for Wayward Children because her parents believe, I think, that she was kidnapped, and they want her to get back to the old Nancy that they know and love so much. One of the first ways that the book shows this is that she gets to the boarding school and opens up her suitcase where she had packed all these beautiful, floaty white and black clothes, which was all that she wore in the Halls of the Dead, where she really felt like she belonged. Those are the clothes she's comfortable in. That's what she wants to wear. But when she opens up her suitcase, she finds that her parents had unpacked all of her stuff that she had put in there and replaced it with all this bright, loud, colorful, childish kind of clothing. And she is super disappointed. She hates these clothes. They don't fit her. They don't suit her. And this is kind of the same problem that all of these other kids at the boarding school have, is that none of them feel at home on Earth anymore. This portal world that they went to expresses who they are better. So there is kind of a large secondary cast in this. We meet a bunch of the other kids who are at the boarding school, as well as Eleanor West, who runs the school and once was a portal fantasy child herself, as well as a couple of other like adult people who help run the school. I suspect that how the series is going to go is that each novella follows one of the characters that we were introduced to in Every Heart a Doorway. That seems to be the case from what I was reading with the summaries of each of the books, so I'm really excited for that. I can't wait to explore more worlds. That was one thing that I wish we had had a little bit more of in this book. It was a little bit more time maybe in the Halls of the Dead so that we could have seen that more firsthand. But this did have a kind of a cool dark academia almost vibe, because there is a murder mystery that happens, and Nancy and the other friends that she makes at the boarding school work together to try and find out who is doing this so that they can continue to stay at the boarding school where they're surrounded at least by people who understand their experience with not fitting in. Once again, I just wish it was longer. I feel like it would have had much more opportunity to develop these characters and get into more of the world. I feel that Nancy was great for a first book character. I didn't find her to be especially compelling, but I thought she was good enough as a main character for this particular novella because it kind of introduces us to the school, tells her story pretty briefly. I do wish we had gotten a little bit more characterization from her, but overall, I thought she was fine. Another thing I would have liked a little bit more is if we had had a little bit more of a clash between all these characters from different portal worlds and making sense of how all these different personalities, because they're suited, each person that goes to a portal world and comes back is suited to that portal world in this case. And I really would have liked seeing the different forms of logic and things like that all of these different characters bring and how they clash with both each other and with the outside world a little bit more. I think that would have been really cool to highlight. But overall, I thought it was really fun. I also really liked the lore that was introduced in this. The worlds fall into particular parameters. I know there's logic and nonsense, and I think the other one is cruel and kind or something to that effect. So the world that you end up going to falls into some of these kind of parameters, and it's oh, you went to a high logic world. That means it makes sense. It follows very distinct sets of rules. A kind versus cruel world. I don't think those are the actual words that they used, but that was kind of the idea, where it's how brutal is this world, or how fun and fluffy and fairy tale-y is it. So I really liked that, and I definitely hope to see more of that in the rest of the series. So overall, with these first two books in the series, I really enjoyed them. I do wish they were both longer because I think there's plenty of room for more exploration of these worlds and this setup, as well as some of the characters. And I don't know why they're so short. It was kind of fun having something that is such a fast read, because you can breeze through these really quickly. They are very readable, easy to follow. Sometimes the voice is even a little bit fairy tale-esque, especially in Down Among the Sticks and Bones. So that was cool, but I do wish that there had been just a little bit more to dig into. I do have one other complaint, which is there's this explanation about something that happens in between these two books, right? Well, you get the explanation in one book and then you get it again in the other book, and they're not the same. So I was left kind of confused. Was it did one of these actually happen? Was one of these stories an unreliable narrator? I don't really know what's going on with that. And so that was a little bit baffling, but I'm still really excited to discover the rest of the world and the characters and everything else that the series has to offer. I definitely highly recommend this series if you're looking for just something quick and fun and interesting, but still dark and intense. Definitely highly recommend the Wayward Children series, books 1 and 2, and I can't wait to get the next ones. Thanks so much for listening to my review. Have a great night, universe.